Good morning, Isley staff. Today we're going to talk about FERPA, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. I'm Gail Fry, and I want to tell you what FERPA is. What is FERPA? FERPA is a federal law that protects confidentiality of student education records. FERPA is a law found in Title 20 of the United States Code, the federal regulations, and it's found in Title 34 of Code of Federal Regulation. Under the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, school districts must maintain the confidentiality of all personally identifiable information in education records related to students. Any and all records, including emails, student files, and personal information, are usually exempt from disclosure, absent parental consent. Under FERPA, schools can disclose directory information, but not social security numbers or info without consent. However, they are required to allow parents and eligible students a reasonable amount of time to let the school know not to disclose this information. FERPA applies to any educational agency and/or institution that receives funds under any program administered by the Secretary of Education. FERPA gives parents certain rights with respect to their children's educational records maintained by educational institutions and agencies to which FERPA applies. Parental rights include the right to inspect and review their students' educational records, seek to have the records amended, and to have some control over the disclosure of their students' educational records or personally identifiable information. These rights transfer to the student once they turn 18 or attend a post-secondary institution. What are the most important things to know about FERPA? FERPA provides for parents and adult-age students to inspect and receive a copy of the student records, the right to deny access to others, specifically those outside the school system with some exceptions, a process to correct errors, including a hearing, the right to opt out of military recruitment, the right to opt out of the disclosure of a student's directory information, a complaint process handled by the Family Compliance Office of the U.S. Department of Education. FERPA does have some significant shortcomings. It does not give students the individual rights to sue the school. Only the U.S. Department of Education can sanction schools that violate FERPA. It puts the burden on students and parents to respond to opt out of opportunities such as disclosure of directory information. It does not dictate requirements for safeguarding education records. FERPA exception. Contrary to common misconceptions, the FCSS report reads, schools have a great deal of flexibility under FERPA to disclose students' data and education records in certain settings. In the context of school safety, FERPA makes an exception to its restrictions on data sharing should knowledge of such information be necessary to protect the health or safety of students or other persons in connection with an emergency. Unintentional ways of violating FERPA: throwing away student records, be careful with vendors, know when to release records, and be cautious about what you tell to whom. Throwing away records. Student records must be shredded. Schools should be responsible for vendors, for what their vendors do with that data. And then knowing when to release records. Parents own the FERPA rights of their child's educational information until the child turns 18 or enters college. There are exceptions, but for the most part, this is how the law reads for FERPA. Be cautious about what you tell to whom. If a principal makes a report about an incident on the playground, such as a fight, and then reads it aloud, this is a FERPA violation because it is an educational record. A staff member can talk about it and not violate FERPA, but reading an educational record is a violation. FERPA in regards to video and audio surveillance. The Electronic Communications Act states that it allows for video surveillance at schools per the Constitution. However, the use of audio recordings raises other legal issues. This act prohibits the interception of any oral communication except where one person has consented to the recording. Surveillance recordings that are created and maintained by schools, law enforcement units, are not considered educational records and therefore are not confidential. If they are maintained by the school itself, they become educational records. If parents ask to see surveillance videos, it would be a FERPA violation not to provide this information if the video is maintained by the school. While technical advances have made it even more important to have surveillance cameras as a part of school security, administrators should take the following steps to keep up with the many legal landscapes. Develop and publish policies describing the purpose of surveillance cameras, install cameras only in the areas where individuals have a low expectation of privacy, notify the school community of the use of surveillance cameras by putting it in school policies, handbooks, websites, and newsletters, and consult with legal counsel before enabling audio recordings. FERPA, in regards to video and audio surveillance, continued. Establish protocols for maintaining equipment and retaining records. Consult the Family Policy Compliance Office 2018 facts on photos and videos under FERPA when evaluating requests from parents, law enforcement, media, and other third parties. Develop protocols governing requests for disclosure, including the handling requests for copies. Following FERPA and its continual changes can make privacy laws confusing. Schools are hard-pressed to protect student data under FERPA and to keep students safe from identity theft, fraud, and extortion. However, FERPA has become weakened over the years due to regulations. Some advocates are trying to have FERPA, which was established in 1974, strengthened and more responsive to the cyber threats of today. There has been an explosion of educational technology, which means there's more disclosure happening and the data isn't really being protected. Legal requirements for data destruction. FERPA does not provide any specific requirements for educational agencies regarding disposition or destruction of data they collect or maintain on themselves, other than requiring them to safeguard FERPA data that is protected from unauthorized disclosure. FERPA does not allow for any educational records to be destroyed if there are any outstanding requests to inspect them. Under the school official exception, FERPA requires that the school or district maintain direct control over authorized recipients' maintenance and use of PII, personally identifiable information, from education records, and that the recipient protect the PII from further unauthorized disclosure. Ways to ensure that your school is FERPA compliant. Raise FERPA awareness. Ensure that all employees are aware of FERPA and that it's their duty to comply with the provisions. Confirm that FERPA applies to you. FERPA applies to any school that receives federal funds from programs administered by the U.S. Department of Education. Know the rights, protections, and exceptions. It is every school's employee's job to learn, understand, and comply with FERPA. Choose compliant vendors. Choose third-party vendors that will comply with FERPA. Train all school employees. Conduct yearly trainings of FERPA. Implement compliant policies and procedures. Implementing FERPA policies and procedures make it easier for staff to comply. FERPA compliance continued. Encrypt files and emails. Encrypted files and emails cannot be accessed without the decryption key, adding an extra layer of protection for school staff whose property, including technology, is stolen or lost. Implement other prevention tools. Ensure there are tools in place that help the entire school comply with FERPA guidelines. At Wichita Public Schools, we do have a FERPA policy. It is in our employee handbooks. I'm going to let you guys kind of read through these. And if you need longer, you can look in your employee handbooks. But we do have what are the rights of the parents, what are the rights of the students, and then what must an educational agency or institution include in its annual notification. And that concludes our presentation today. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it. Have a great day.